Oh man, and just like that, y'all, what is going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to once again another episode of the HFWB Podcast Series. Once again, this is your host, Clifton Pope. I'm back with another solo episode of the HFWB Podcast Series as I'm continuing the Wellness Whisperer series of the HFWB Podcast Series to where within the Wellness Whisperer series, I'm basically diving into a whole lot of things on how you could kind of attack kind of the four corners, I like to call it, on how you can evolve from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual standpoint. So that's the overall purpose of the Wellness Whisperer series of the HFWB podcast series. Basically, what I'm doing, y'all, I'm bringing y'all into my world of all the things that I practice from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and a spiritual standpoint. Because at the end of the day, we're all not perfect. We're all growing through what we go through. We're all trying to find room for improvement. And at the same time, we're all trying to strive to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. I mean, nobody has it all figured out. If that was the case, I remember listening to this on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and I forget which episode that it was, and I forget who quoted it exactly, but if we all had it figured out, we'd be a bunch of billionaires with six packs all the time. So clearly that's not the case, which is why I'm basically trying to figure out ways on how I can get better every single day and learn from the mistakes that I make. And at the same time, once I figure these things out within myself, I can return pass the knowledge on to everyone who's currently listening to the HFWB podcast series, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, right? And at the same time, I appreciate every single person who is taking time out of their busy, productive schedules to simply download and stream an episode of the HFWB podcast series. Be sure to hit that download and that stream button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, anywhere you can think of where a podcast platform is possible. I'm pretty sure you can find the HFWB podcast series there. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you can definitely do that. And for all my people on YouTube, y'all hit that subscribe button on my YouTube channel at Health Fitness Wealth Business. And business has one S in it for the YouTube link. So that's at Health Fitness Wealth Business. 8726. Y'all hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. That way we can continue to grow one subscriber at a time, one day at a time, and you can get full access to basically the full video of this HFWB podcast series that I am currently recording as we speak. Now, within this Wellness Whisperer series, you heard me talk about a whole bunch of things, and I've kind of been all over the place with it, and I apologize if that's been the case. So I'm going to kind of focus on all the things that I've been talking about, but at the same time, focus on certain sections and then dedicate other sections for future episodes, because trust me, this Wellness Whisperer series is more than likely going to be going on for quite some time, more than likely until the end of 2024, because as the year 2024 comes to a close, I feel like it's more vital than ever that this information, that this knowledge and this resources gets passed on to those who need it. And if you don't need it, that's perfectly fine. Pass it on to someone who does need it. That way they can be informed. That way they can be educated. That way they can have the resources available to where they can utilize within their own right, to where they can create generational health, which in return will lead to generational wealth, which will lead to, of course, knowing yourself, knowing your worth, knowing your values, what you believe in, and vice versa. So definitely take full advantage of that. So I'm going to talk about a few things in this particular episode of the HFWB podcast series as we keep this Wellness Whisperer series rolling. The last couple of episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series, I've been talking about the overall journey that I've been going on, just trying to tweak and fine tune some things on how I can continue to evolve from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. As you know, if you've listened to the previous few episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, I've basically been incorporating a whole lot of different practices. As far as I've been walking a little bit more, which basically helps out with enhancing your physical health, your mental well-being, your social interaction, and a quality of life, whether you're just strolling through a park, walking your dog, having a brisk walk in between work, like on your lunch break or something. Each step contributes to a healthier, happier you. And it's like Hippocrates said, walking is man's best medicine. So I definitely continue to encourage y'all to definitely do that. And another thing that I've talked about in previous episodes, as far as, I've been talking about grounding and basically earthing, as they call it, something that I've been implementing into my routine as well. And overall, just a quick, brief summary. And if you want to learn more about it, go listen to the previous episodes I recorded of the HFWB Podcast Series, being episode 150 and 151, where I kind of highlight the importance of walking and grounding from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. It won't be the first time that I do it, and it probably won't be the last time that I do it. I'm not going to spend as much time beating a dead horse over it. I may come back to it as I dive into other segments as well. But overall, just a quick summary on grounding for those who aren't aware of it. Grounding offers a range of physical and emotional benefits, from reducing inflammation and pain to improving sleep and emotional well-being. It's basically a simple, natural practice that anyone can incorporate into their daily routine for enhanced overall health. And there's plenty of different ways you can do it, by just walking barefooted in like dirt, grass, or basically sand, and basically embracing the dirt and rubbing it between your fingertips, and vice versa with the sand. And you could probably do it with grass as well. Most importantly, you're taking advantage of the electrical currents that Mother Earth is providing within all that, to where you can literally charge yourself up thanks to the power of Mother Earth. And I'm going to definitely come back into walking and into grounding and all that stuff, because what I definitely plan on doing in future episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, you're definitely going to be hearing me break down the Savers Method a whole lot more, which is, of course, the Savers Method that you can learn from reading the book The Miracle Morning by Al Harad, which I definitely recommend everyone reading. It talks about the importance of the Savers Method, on how you could turn that into basically a miracle morning routine, implementing the art of silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And I'm definitely going to go into each and every single one of those individually. That way we can have a full understanding on basically what each of those can do for you individually, and how you can incorporate all of them together to where you can literally have the miracle morning and create a little bit of magic that works in your favor early in the morning. Start off your day fresh. That's something that I've definitely been practicing literally since the pandemic in January 2020, when the pandemic actually started. And that's something that I am still practicing to this very day. It gets to the point where it even drives the love of my life, Miss Emily Espinosa, crazy, because she's always like, you got to do your routine before you do anything, don't you? But it's all part of, finding that time to take care of yourself, because no one is going to really take care of yourself at the end of the day but yourself. And you got to have, a little bit of me time incorporated into that. So what a better way to have me time than to incorporate, the first hour or two of the moment that you wake up towards practicing a moment of silence, affirmations, visualizing what it is that you want to accomplish based on the things that you write down, as far as in the scribing, based on the things that you read that gets you empowered, motivated, and inspired. And most importantly, waking your body up and making sure that mind and body connection's in sync by getting a little bit of movement, exercise, 30 minutes of light to moderate, or if you want to, intense activity a day will make a difference. But in future episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series, for the HFWB Podcast Series, I'll definitely break each of those things down in future episodes. You can guarantee that. But other than that, I wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on fasting and in general, because I've been talking about it within the Wellness Whisperer series, especially episode 150 and 151 of the HFWB Podcast Series. And this is episode 153, as today is Friday, September the 27th, 2024. And if you're listening to this episode right now, which will probably come out by the end of this weekend, no later than September the 29th, I basically just broke yet another 36-hour water fast. And honestly, I feel fantastic. I feel great. I feel like the overall benefits of what fasting has been doing for me more so than anything. I mean, fasting really, I don't really do, this is the reason why I've been doing fasting, to be honest with y'all. I've been doing it more so for the mental aspect and the spiritual aspect of it versus the physical aspect of it, because as you heard me explain in previous episodes of the HFWB podcast series, yes, fasting is good for, pushing the body to use fat to store it for energy, aiding in weight loss. It helps out with enhancing insulin sensitivity, reducing the risk of diabetes. Yes, it helps out with autophagy, from triggering a process to where the body cleans out the damaged cells within your body and regenerate new ones. One of my favorites things that basically that fasting does is that it increases longevity and increases your lifespan by improving your overall cellular health, thanks to the autophagy process of what the body goes through when fasting. But I want to kind of focus a little bit more as far as on the, and also before I forget, fasting does help out, with your gut health. It helps, well, actually, it helps out with your heart health as far as reducing the risk of blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, or excuse me, heart disease, blood pressure, and high cholesterol, which is all part of insulin resistance. So it definitely helps out there. It helps out with, of course, inflammation, where the fasting can reduce inflammation and oxidative stress in the body, leading to overall health. But here's some of my favorite things on what fasting does for me. It helps out with the gut health, which meaning whenever you're doing like a 36-hour water fast where you're eliminating all hard foods altogether and you're drinking nothing but water, you're giving your digestive system a break, because we're constantly stuffing our body with food, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or combination of all three, or two out of the three, however you approach eating on a regular basis. We got to give our digestive system a little bit of a break, more so than ever. And that in return can improve your overall gut health and reduce symptoms of conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome, which will definitely pay off in the long run without a shadow of a doubt. That's one thing that I've noticed within, what fasting has done for me, because anyone who knows me very well knows that I like to get my grub on. And sometimes we need to give our digestive system a break as far as catching up as far as to all the food that's being processed on a regular basis, which is why I definitely recommend everybody to implement fasting into their regime. Now, I want to kind of talk about the spiritual and the mental benefits of fasting a little bit more in details, because honestly, that's the only reason why I'm doing fasting to begin with. I'm doing it for the mental clarity, and I'm doing it for the spiritual enlightenment, because when it comes to the mental clarity of it, the mindfulness practice and the discipline mentally, because I had a great conversation with a individual who I had lunch with earlier today, and I was explaining to her the importance of why fasting and what it does for me. Fasting, it's more of a mental thing than it is a physical thing. Let's just make that perfectly clear. Fasting is more of a mental aspect versus the physical aspect, because you have to mentally tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to eat anything for this set period of time, and then I could have another meal within this period of time. So fasting basically teaches discipline and self-control over your regular daily eating habits, right? Which means it promotes mindfulness practice in a way, and a greater appreciation for food, and at the same time, life's simple pleasures. So as in other words, when you go for, like, say for instance, if you're just starting off in fasting and you're doing intermittent fasting for 12 hours, I don't know, you fast from, like, say from 8 p.m. to basically 8 a.m. Honestly, if you really think about it, and I had a great conversation with I had a great conversation with Mr. Mike DeMarzo, who will actually be on the HFWB Podcast Series very, very soon. And he was telling me about the importance of, the word breakfast, right? The word breakfast, if you break the two words up, it's basically break fast. As in other words, technically we are fasting on a regular basis every single day. The moment we lay down and go to sleep for however long we may go to sleep, we're technically in a way doing a little bit of a fast, which is why they call breakfast the word breakfast, break fast. We're breaking the fast that we're on while we're in a deep conscious sleep to where we can have our first meal of the day. So for those who are still hesitant and have their questions about fasting, how about do this? Basically, eat your dinner as you normally would. Eat your dinner, I would say, no later than 9, 10 p.m. at night. Go to sleep. Then you're going to go to sleep, for about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how your flow of the day is going. You go to sleep from 6 to 8 hours. You don't eat another meal until after 10 p.m. And then basically you go to sleep, wake up, say, for instance, 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, or 7 o'clock in the morning. You already got about a good 7 to 8 hours of fasting in while you're in a deep sleep, unless you get up and have like a late night snack or something, which is rare. But overall, you get where I'm going with this. If you're fasting while you're sleeping, because I've never met anybody in the history of mankind who is literally eating something while they're in the middle of a deep sleep, unless somebody is shoving food in their mouth as far as playing some sort of practical joke. But that's like a slim to none chance of that even happening within itself, which is why I would recommend, if you want to get fasting going and kind of be introduced to it, start off with intermittent fasting, which is basically 12 hours. All you got to do is eat your dinner no later than 10 p.m. And then then don't eat your next meal until the earliest 10 a.m. to about noon, kind of like around lunchtime, that mid-morning lunch hour break kind of thing. You can't go wrong with that. Just to introduce yourself to a little bit of fasting, just to introduce yourself to the discipline and self-control of your eating habits, to where you can appreciate that next meal a little bit more when the time does come, of course. So that's why I would definitely encourage anyone who is hesitant and has their doubts on whether they can do it or not, try intermittent fasting for 12 hours. You got to crawl before you walk, right? And once you do that, then before you know it, you can increase from 12 hours to maybe 18 hours, and then 18 hours to 24 hours. And then before you know it, you're building yourself up to that 36-hour water fast. Me personally, the longest that I've done a fast has been 60 hours. And I look on challenging myself to improve on that going into the holidays, especially for Thanksgiving, because my goal on Thanksgiving is I plan on doing at least a 3-day fast. At least a 3-day fast. And then eventually, going into, say, the new year, going into 2025, I'm going to look into definitely doing like a 3 to 7 day fast and kind of just building on it, because the best thing about fasting is not only the mental clarity of it, it's the spiritual enlightenment from it, because it's been a religious practice for multiple centuries, because many people fast for spiritual reasons, because they're seeking increased spiritual awareness. And at the same time, they're looking to connect more to God and more so to the Holy Spirit within themselves. That's the reason why I've been doing fasting more so than anything, because I don't know if people realize this or not. When it comes to fasting, it's been around since the beginning of time. If you pay attention to your readings of the Bible, it talks about it specifically in the book of Deuteronomy, which we'll definitely get into a whole nother episode within that. But just to kind of highlight why fasting is important, look at Moses, for example. Moses literally fasted for 40 days, 40 nights, no bread, without yeast, no water. And he was just up in the mountains with God, just, connecting with them, doing that religious practice, increasing his overall spiritual awareness and his spiritual connection to God. It provided him a time of reflection, and it provided him time for introspection as well. And at the end of the day, it provided Moses, I'm sure, some mental clarity in the process, to where it was like his mental clarity increased and the emotional resilience increased during and after the fasting as well. And look what came out of that. The 10 Commandments that is everywhere we may go, everywhere we may be, especially in all the churches and in some people's homes, just so they can remind themselves as far as the book of instruction that God talks about in the book of Deuteronomy when you read the Holy Bible. My point is that if Moses could fast for 40 days and 40 nights and come up with the 10 commandments, if the Son Jesus Christ can fast for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness to where he can get closer to God, and if all the other great prophets in the Bible, from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joshua, just to name a few other prophets, can do it, that you can do it as well. But again, crawl before you walk. Baby steps, y'all, baby steps, because that's how you can. It's like once you begin fasting, as far as from the spiritual and the spiritual enlightenment and the mental clarity, it's like you rediscover your overall passion about what you're passionate about in life. It's like you rediscover why you're a sensual and you're a creative being. And at the same time, it allows you to be more in tune with your emotions and your feelings, to where you can increase your overall emotional health, hence that emotional resilience. And at the same time, your overall mental clarity is improved as well. So it all kind of adds up when you really think about it from that perspective, which is why I kind of wanted to touch on why fasting is very, very important. And trust me, I'm going to go into more of the science on why the health benefits of fasting is more important than ever, and why it's even backed by science. But I'm going to save that for the next episode within the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series. Because if you notice what I said, as far as, being passionate about your life, being a sensual and creative being, and being in tune with your feelings and emotions, that allows you to tap in to your sacral chakra. Now, in the last episode of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, I said I was going to go into a little bit of the chakra system. And for those who need a reminder of what the chakra system is, it's the body system of energy centers, which means within every major component within our body, there's an energy disk that basically allows you to explore different aspects of yourself, from the physical, emotional, and the spiritual well-being of yourself. It's basically comes from ancient Indian traditions, and it's been around for, of course, centuries, without a doubt. I talked about the root chakra as far as, it's aspects being related to survival, stability, and of course, safety and security, as far as food, shelter, money, your job, your home, all that stuff. And when you're balanced, you feel grounded, secure, and stable. And when you're in balance, that's where anxiety, fear, and physical issues like lower back and fatigue comes into play a little bit more. Just as a quick little review of what I talked about the root chakra, as far as for the HFWB podcast series, the Wellness Whisperer series, go check out episode 151 to kind of understand that a little bit more if you want to know a little bit more in details. But overall, I want to focus a little bit on the sacral chakra for this component of the Wellness Whisperer series, because there's a lot of things we could benefit from the sacral chakra, because the location of the sacral chakra, that energy disk that's within your body, my body, and every single human being's body, it's located in the lower abdomen region, which is about 2 inches below the navel. So it's kind of like right within your abdomen region. That's where the reproductive system, like right around where your reproductive system is. For the men, the penis; for the women, the uterus. It's right around that area, which is why The associated aspects of the sacral chakra has to do with pleasure. It has to do with emotional expression. It's related to our sense of well-being, our sexuality, and our pleasure, for example. And when our sacral chakra is balanced, you feel more creative, you feel more passionate, as far as you're more passionate about the things that you believe in, you're passionate about who you are, what you stand for, you're passionate about whatever your skill, gift, talent, and whatever it is, your abilities that you possess that makes you the best version of you that you can be. And at the same time, you're emotionally balanced because you're in tune with your feelings and emotions. You don't let your emotions control you. You have full control of your emotions and how you feel, because you develop this sense of self-awareness, like, okay, I'm sad right now, but I know that this is temporary and this too shall pass. Or I'm very upset or I'm very angry right now, but I know this is also temporary. This too shall pass. It's like you maintain that focus as far as just realizing that all feelings and all feelings and emotions are all just temporarily. Like they say, happiness is temporary, joy is permanent. You stay in tune with that permanent, stable feeling of joy, to where that allows you to realize that, hey, all the other emotions will pass eventually, because it won't last forever, it's only temporarily. And more than likely, it's more to test you more so than anything. So that's stuff that's interesting and good to know. So here's the element of the sacral chakra for those who are interested, which is basically water, which is very, very powerful within itself. The color of the sacral chakra, that is of course orange. And I'm going to definitely get into all the elements as far as the importance of each element within the Wellness Whisperer series, as far as earth, air, water, fire, and how we can relate to all of those things as well. I'm going to get into that as we continue to expand the Wellness Whisperer series, but I'm just letting you know the element that is associated with the sacral chakra is water, and the color that is associated with it is orange, for instance. So here's a good example of all this. If you want, look at it from a nutrition standpoint. If your sacral chakra is all out of alignment, and if you feel like your emotions are not as stable as you want it to be, or if you feel like you're lacking a little bit of energy, or if you feel like, for the women out there, the reproductive issues are out of control, here's a good example on how you can fix your sacral chakra just from a nutrition standpoint. You can basically eat yourself an orange. You can eat yourself a carrot. You can eat any kind of orange food to help out balancing your sacral chakra, to where you were not dealing with as much emotional instability, lack of energy, and reproductive issues, to where you could feel a little bit more creative, passionate, and emotionally balanced. Another thing that you can do to help tap into your sacral chakra a little bit more, and this is something that I practice on a regular basis, you can basically sit in a calm, cool, meditative state. You can close your eyes. You can sit nice, relaxed, and tall, whether it's in your chair, your couch, your bed. Close your eyes, draw your belly button into the spine, and you can just focus on your breathing, inhaling through your nose and then exhaling slowly out of your nose or your mouth, and do like a nice little 3-second inhale, 3-second hold of the breath, and a 3-second exhale. You can do that in a repetitive cycle for about 5 to 10 minutes minimum, to where it's like a small, quick little meditation to a certain degree. And you can do that while listening to this frequency in particular, which is 417 HZ frequency. You can YouTube that. There's plenty of basically HZ frequencies that you could tap into. But for the sacral chakra, and for this episode in particular, YouTube 417 HZ frequency. I promise you it will make a difference in helping balancing out the chakra system, to where we can feel more creative, we can feel more passionate, and we can feel more emotionally balanced as well. And at the same time, there's even some yoga stretches that you can do as well. And as a matter of fact, before I forget, that affirmation that I said, as far as I am passionate about my life, I am I am a sensual and creative being, and I am in tune with my feelings and emotions. I want you to tell that to yourself in your head while you're breathing in and out with your eyes closed, back straight, and sitting nice, tall, and upright, all while meditating to that HC frequency, of course, 417 HZ frequency, to where it can make a difference, to where it can make an impact slowly but surely, without question, every single time, without a shadow of a doubt. So that's kind of my breakdown of the second of the seven chakras within the chakra system. And we're going to definitely come back to all of these chakras. It won't be the first time that I break down all of these chakra systems. I'll probably wind up breaking them down again as a friendly reminder to kick off 2025. But just to end 2024 on a positive note, we're going to go ahead and do that for now. But anyways, as I transition towards the end of this particular episode of the HFWB Podcast Series, I want to talk about a little bit of, first and foremost, I challenge everybody to currently read the Holy Bible from start to finish, starting with the book of Genesis, going all the way into Revelations. And I want to kind of touch on Revelation a little bit more so than ever, because in the last episode 151 of the HFWB podcast series for the Wellness Whisperer series, I talked about how, the book of Genesis is basically the accounts of the creation of the world and humanity, the 7 days of creation, a little bit of the story of Adam and Eve, touching on that a little bit. But I want to kind of touch on the importance of I want to touch on the original sin aspect and how we can overcome that within itself, because the original sin basically stems from the act of disobedience, which basically introduced sin into humanity to begin with. I mean, look at what happened with Cain and Abel. They suffered from the original sin based on, Cain killing his brother Abel out of jealousy and going against everything that God wanted him to do in that regard. And if you really want to think about it, things were getting so wicked after the whole Cain and Abel story and everything, to where it's people don't realize this about the book of Genesis. People were living literally to be hundreds and hundreds of years old. Like, a lot of people don't notice, but the Adam, the first man who was created by God within the creation of Adam and Eve, a lot of people don't know that Adam lived to be 931 years old was when Adam technically died in modern mankind, which a lot of people don't even know that. Another thing that people don't know is that longevity and the growth of humankind was essential back in the book of Genesis, to where multiple people were living to be past 100 years old. Like, living to be 100 years old is the equivalence of being 30 years old in modern time right now. It's kind of normal to see that. Like, it's normal to see people to go into their 20s and 30s, barring any major travesties that happen within their life. People in the book of Genesis were living all the way up to 500, 600, 700 years old. Like, look at what happened with Adam. He died when he was 931 years old. If you don't believe me, go look in the book of Genesis and it'll explain it more so than anything. But at the same time, with everything that was going on, there was a lot of good, there was a lot of bad going on within it, to where it's God had to get everything under control as far as the, taming down the longevity just a little bit, but at the same time, getting rid of all the wickedness and the evil spirits that was going on within the world, which explains book Genesis 6 through 9, chapter 6 through 9, the story of Noah and the great flood, where basically God decided to cleanse the earth of its wickedness. And Noah's ark, Noah was deemed righteousness because he built the ark to save his family, pair of every animals, and all that stuff. We kind of get all of that, and we understand that to a certain degree as far as within the book of Genesis. But at the same time, it allows us to understand that Sometimes we need to, if we can learn anything from the story of the flood and the story of Noah's Ark and anything, sometimes we have to take time to cleanse ourselves of this original sin, and we have to cleanse ourselves of this wickedness that we may have within ourselves and that we face within the world on a regular basis, which kind of ties into everything that I've been talking about within the Wellness Whisperer series. We have to learn how to take care of ourselves. We have to implement the art of self-care and self-practices more so than anything, because, and I figured, I wanted to kind of end with a nice little quote here, a nice little healing quote that I found here to kind of close out this particular episode of the HFWB podcast series. It's from Helen Keller, a woman who was both blind and both deaf at the same time, but still found joy in the world, because she did say this, and this is a quote: "Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it." Which means, for those who are wondering, if Helen Keller, being blind and deaf at the same time, can overcome the suffering that she went through on an everyday basis, what is your excuse as far as everything that you're going through within the course of your life? Yes, we are all born sinners. Yes, we are dealing with some form of wickedness, or is it really just weakness covered up in the form of wickedness? Either way, we have the ability to rise above the suffering. We have the ability to rise above our weaknesses and turn them into overall strengths. And we can do this, y'all, by growing through what we go through, finding room for improvement, because we're all learning from our mistakes every single day. And we're not really necessarily, we all deal with wins and losses, but I like to call it wins and lessons, where we have the ability to learn something new every single day, no matter how good or no matter how bad it may seem. Never stop learning, because the moment you stop learning is the moment you stop growing, and that's the moment where you're going to suffer tremendously, because you're stalling your overall potential of what you can reach within yourself. Which is why I stress the importance of finding ways to evolve physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That way, we can overcome the suffering that we may be experiencing within ourselves. That way, we can heal ourselves from within. That way, we can help others heal themselves from within. Because at the end of the day, if you want to change the world, and if you want to have a revolution within the world, you got to have a revolution within yourself. That way you can inspire others to have a revolution and a change within themselves. Before you know it, you got $100 million man army maybe marching behind you, one day at a time, one step at a time. So that's kind of all I wanted to talk about in this particular episode of the HFWB podcast series and the Wellness Whisperer series. And I definitely encourage everybody, as Helen Keller said, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it. As in other words, yes, there's a lot of wickedness and there's a lot of weakness in the world based on the original sin that they talk about in the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible. But at the same time, we have the ability to overcome this original sin. We don't have to be like Adam and Eve and fall victim to the original sin and the act of disobedience. We can basically utilize all this suffering and turn it into our overall strength and use it to fuel ourselves within the fire, to where we can rise up above all of this, and where we can even basically overcome the suffering and overcome the obstacles, to where we can continue to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, not only for ourselves, but for the people that we love and care about and who we support the most, and all of those things, and vice versa. Just thought I'd mention that to you real quick as I wrap up this episode of the HFWB podcast series. I thank y'all once again for taking time out of your busy schedule, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, by subscribing to the episode, subscribing to the HFWB podcast series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Be sure y'all download and stream the episode, all episodes of the HFWB podcast series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, any platform you could think of that has a podcast. Be sure to do so. You won't be disappointed. I can assure you that. And at the same time, Y'all continue to follow me on all the social media platforms. Y'all help me grow my followers one time. Follow me on Facebook. Search me, Clifton Pope. I'm not hard to find. Search health, fitness, wealth, business, all lowercase on Facebook. That's not hard to find. Follow me on Instagram at all lowercase cpope CPOPE _44. Follow me on TikTok at healthf wealth B, all lowercase. That's the word health, HEALTH, the letter F, the word wealth, WEALTH, and then the letter B for boy. .CP. Follow me on TikTok there. And at the same time, visit the website healthfitnesswealthbusiness.com /CP for all the latest updates for everything with health, fitness, wealth, business. And real quick, y'all, I want y'all to get y'all a copy of my latest book that I published, self-published, called End Times, What is Your Revelation? Because this feeds in on how you can overcome all of these original sins and the wickedness of the 7 deadly sins, from gluttony to sloth, the pride to basically lust, to envy, to greed, to wrath. And we can rediscover ourselves and reveal some surprising and unknown facts we may or may not already know about yourself. So go order your copy of End Times, What is Your Revelation on Amazon.com and search that book, End Times, What is Your Revelation, by yours truly, Clifton Pope. It will come up. And for all my people living here in Corpus Christi, Texas, y'all need to go to Black Cat bookstores and get your copy of End Times, What is Your Revelation as well. It's on 1316 South Staple Street. And they are open as of right now, and they will be open all weekend. So go get a copy of the book as well there. And you could also get my copies of What's Wealth Without Work and A Dollar and a Vision available at the Black Cat bookstores here in Corpus Christi, Texas, and available on Amazon.com as well. I want y'all to be on the lookout for my next book that's coming out as well, my personal development self-help book, which is the trilogy to What's Wealth Without Work and A Dollar and a Vision. It's called Consistency with a Sense of Urgency. It will be out by the end of October, as I'm finishing up editing that book as we speak, as I will get ready to self-publish that book as well momentarily. But besides that, October, I'm definitely going to be in a zone in October. That's for sure. I mean, there's so many things coming. I got a meditation fundraiser that I'm going to be hosting at Mission of Mercy Thursday, October the 10th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. That will be on 2421 Ayer Street here in Corpus Christi, Texas. For everyone who's here in Corpus Christi, Texas, let's celebrate World Mental Health Day by basically coming together, having a nice little group meditation, so to speak, that I will be leading along with a couple of other individuals who I plan on recruiting and who are already a part of it, to where we can raise awareness for World Mental Health Day, and we can help raise some money to help grow Mission of Mercy's mental health services, all for a great cost, because that's where all the donations and proceedings will go towards in the meantime, in between time. So that's coming up. And yeah, man, y'all just keep on supporting the health, fitness, wealth, business movement, because information is the new money. And the more informed and educated we are, the more that we can grow one day at a time, one step at a time, and become a better versions of ourselves by evolving physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to where the financial aspect of things will come in abundance at the right moment and right time. You can't go wrong with that. Just like you can't go wrong with, of course, subscribing to the HFWB Podcast Series, downloading and streaming an episode of the HFWB Podcast Series, and leaving feedback and comments on all the episodes you listen to, because your feedback matters, your voice matters, and I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you, the people, because I do it to serve you, the people, with information, knowledge, and resources on things you may or may not already know. Just as friendly reminders, of course. But with that being said, this is yours truly, Clifton Pope of the HFWB Podcast Series, encouraging y'all to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. Until next time, peace, love, positive vibrations, y'all.